Alright, so today I'm going to reboot my system. And I'm just going to go over how the game section went, because that's a little more real than going with the archivers. And I'm going to go on camera. I'm going to try to run these things. I've done some of this before, but I'm just going to do it again. I'm going to go over the basic statistics. What does Pkgsrc, how many packages does Pkgsrc have to offer? How many of those packages I was actually able to build? Of the ones that I built, how many were able to install? Of the ones that I've installed, which ones can actually be used? And of the ones that could actually theoretically can be used, which ones actually run? And of the ones that actually run, which ones actually behave as expected?
Share and enjoy, journey through life with a plastic boy, more down by your side, let your pal be your guide, and when it breaks down or starts to annoy, or cries when it moves and gives you no joy, cause it seems like your hands point sense with your cat, let fire on your wall, or ends off your door, and you get to the point you can't stand anymore. Bring it to us, we won't give a thing, we'll tell you.
On this episode of Haiku Guide to the Galaxy. So, starts out, as best I could tell, there are 376 packages in the package source. We're going to narrow this down. So let's go with that again. Package source offers 376 packages. Of the 376 packages, 15 are not for Haiku. Can't be used by Haiku because they require Linux emulation. Okay, so that brings it down to 361. Of the 361 packages that were offered, I was able to build 184. Or create packages out of 184. Out of the 184 that I created packages with, 179 were able to be installed. I've listed those 179 installations, and now I'm going to go over whether I was able to run them, what the quality was, and do all this stuff on screen. And I'll probably have more than one recording. And different issues about it. Is the sound working? Is the mouse working? Is it... And just remember, I wasn't able to build my own X server. My results, if I didn't download the X server that was already built back in 2009 from Penguin's site, I would have less result. Every one of the X11 base games that requires a running XSDL server, and we'll be able to tell because the terminals say it can't find the display. I wouldn't have been able to use that at all with my own skills and experience in compiling things. Even though I tried very hard, and I actually thought I got the patches right. I thought something's obviously not working right, and obviously there is a way for an X-based server to actually run in the system. I just don't know what it is. There are some things that are just completely undocumented. In general, throughout just the whole body of knowledge between Haiku, the trends, and package source, and their crossing paths, how the paths cross isn't that well documented. And it's a lot to ask because the stuff here is already free. So, okay, so let's just start out with this first one. It's called Overkill. If I didn't actually lose my... Yeah, I did. So I got to restart. That's rare. So just so you know, it doesn't happen that much. Where I'd absolutely lose all use of my operating system in a matter of seconds. We get to hear our theme song once again. Let's say, of course, mute the sound. Now, Samba's working well, and this thing's turning out to be more of a take it down to there. So, all right. Package number 1 is going to be Overkill. Let's go with a 0. Now, I don't have any of these things pathed. And there are some issues with pathing that I hope to touch on as I go through these things. So, and it is extraordinarily complicated in general. Pkgsrc at least tries, when it can, to embed a path in the binary to look for the library that the package needs to run. It doesn't always do that. So, and I'll also comment when something actually runs where I had to do something unusual to get it to run right. Just with my own skills, knowledge, the patches have been made available to me, the amount of effort I was willing to put in, which was a lot. And I will say that with the pathing, it doesn't mean that I don't anticipate that things are any worse because I use Pkgsrc or didn't use Pkgsrc. In fact, things might be worse because I have to manually place things, and But in the only case it would end up being worse is if there isn't any kind of pathing inside the binary to find a library, if that is the issue. We'll think about it. If we get any errors that have some kind of something to do with a library that shows up on the screen, this library, that library, then we'll look. I'll do a read elf. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna do this. First game is gonna be Overkill, and it's from what I could. I just if I could tell here, it's resize the screen. It really doesn't do all that well. I don't know how to really actually use this game. And then eventually it just kind of does nothing. The only way to get out is to kill the terminal. So I'm gonna call that junk. Okay, so score is so far we have 1 junk app. So the numbers are now the numbers start to dwindle. They're not all junk, I'll tell you that. So we have 179 that we could look at to see whether it's junk or not. Or if it's not junk, how well it works. Next one's Forced Attack. And that's complete junk. This, there's something wrong with the Pygame build. So now we have 2 junk games, and we're going to go to the third. Game number 3 is something called Interlogic, spelled with an I. What do we do? Hold on, I'm actually getting this. Alright, that looks to be okay. I didn't require an X window. Now, if I knew how this game actually works. I think the idea is to get rid of these things. I'm just going to get out. That looks to work well. If that normally has sound, well, it doesn't. I don't know if it does. There's no X11 required. And as you can see, the screen gets resized. So it works, but the screen resolution is toast as a result. Remember, this is all stuff I've built. So I'm right. So I put these things up to get people to look at and see whether for the reason being is that someone wants to look and see, oh, that's what he was able to do. They can see the symptoms of where I'm at and change the patches and make things go better. At least that's what I'm hoping for. The next one I'm going to comment on, there's a lot of these that come up, and I have some evidence, and maybe I'll talk about some other things. There's just a lot to cover here. I guess we'll get the idea when I get to about 40, but anyway, this is what I've been able to muster. So, next game is going to be Kobo Deluxe. And there you go. We're done. That's junk. It says, it gives a warning that, and I'll talk about this right now. It gives a warning that the package was built with library PNG 1.6, but it's running with 1.5.12. Okay, there are a number of issues to actually talk about here that makes a difference between it working right and it not working right. I know of at least two of them, there may be more. The first issue is that, in fact, I'm going to do a read elf on Kobo right now. Okay, so it's saying that it wants to get its libraries from boot home package library. And it actually wants to find all these things in boot home package library. So basically, a number of things could be going on here in general. It could be that it wants to find library root in my Pkgsrc directory, and well, Pkgsrc doesn't come with a library root. But what's the most interesting thing about this is, like with Foo Billiard, and Foo Billiard will have a similar pathing to it. When I compiled this, I didn't, as far as I know, mess with the pathing. Pretty sure I didn't. But let's just grep through my settings and be sure. And I'm going to tell you, this is going to be extraordinarily complicated. So all I can really speak of is what I think is going on at the end of the day. Or what the evidence tends to point to. Let's just look for games. Yeah, there were a number of times where I did have to do something to get things to go where it was, but it did not, as far as I could see here, that didn't include Kobo Deluxe, as far as I could tell. Okay, so did I patch Kobo Deluxe to make this all screwed up? Surely I must have patched this in some way that's going to make it not. No. So I have no patches for Kobo Deluxe. I have no compile time options. I'm not injecting any libraries. it's basically able to compile and build a package out of the box. So what's going on? Why is this not working? This is probably a good example, actually. Well, what ended up happening here, perhaps, and let's, I'm going to do a readelf on this library gl.so. Library SDL and SDL image. Okay, so let's just do that. Now I'm going to give you one answer as part of this whole thing. This library GL, since I knew that none of the stuff is going to run, if I use the library GL that I had built, and even there's someone that had a lot of success, and he didn't even build a library GL himself, because the library GL that I built, and most anybody builds in Haiku, as far as I could tell, unless somebody can point me to a library GL that's going to build without unresolved symbols buried in it. I'd like to see it. I'm not even sure if Haiku Porter would be able to do that. So this one is basically looking for libraries that generally are in boot system. LibRoot, LibB, LibNetwork, LibTranslation, and Library Standard C++. So that's library G, and it actually does not have a path associated with it. That also tells you it doesn't have an R path, so it wasn't really built in package source. But so far, it's not pointing to library PNG, the actual library I'm having issues with. So now let's look for SDL image. And this is wanting to go back. This was built in package source. But it also wants to use some libraries that are actually in Haiku there, under boot system library, and then there's just library SDL. If I really go back to more same version, got a lot of them, but this one also wants to go to boot home package library, and it doesn't. It's not really pointing to library PNG. So what's going on here? That is, so it's trying to load up okay, so I'm going to look at boot system. I shouldn't do, I don't know if I should do these, because it's just same version. And yes, I'd copy that over. So I'm not, it would take a while for me to figure out why it's going back to library PNG. But in general, I found out that what's happening a lot in package source is that when the compiler tool does its thing, especially with the library tool, it'll want to link with the libraries that are in boot system library by default. So even Mesa. So there is Pkgsrc does have a feature where you can say use the built-in Mesa, use this built-in thing, that built-in thing. But I found at times sometimes the builds actually need the build link. It's not just a convenience, but it's a requirement. And so it doesn't end up copying in these built-in libraries. In general, what's happening a lot, especially with the graphical programs, is if I build my own, I get undefined references. If I don't build my own, and I use Haikus, it doesn't have the library path embedded in the binary. So Haiku will follow the instructions that are provided or dictated by this env. And up here, nothing in here includes a path for boot home package library. You say, well, why don't you just add that to your library path? You actually cannot. You cannot add anything to this library path without breaking the system, I've come to find out. In fact, the only way you could even edit this at all is if you have write access to the system and you go to boot system boot. And I don't recommend this. And you change the setup environment, and you'd have to get rid of this this quote, percentage in A, and then add what you want in that area. If you don't, well, if you do that, you can path anything you want. You can, until you reboot. Once you reboot, you just won't be able to come back in the system anymore. And also, some of the programs won't work, like PE won't work. Okay. Don't know why the system became under those circumstances, but basically, you're not being able to put extra paths in the library path is a result of some basic things being set up the way they were for whatever reason that I'm not going to judge. Okay, so when library tool does its thing, I believe it looks at the environment and it follows the instructions here. It first looks in boot home, config non-package, library, and there's 4 paths that it provides. 1, 2, 3, and it looks at boot system library last. So if you have a binary that's built that does not have any pathing, the only way you can get it pathed is by putting it into boot, home, config, non-packaged, and the appropriate subdirectory, bin, or library. Otherwise, it will not be pathed. And by pathed, I mean, I don't have to type bin env to get env to come up. I just type env. Okay. Well, when a binary runs, and it has nothing embedded in it to tell where to find the library, it asks the system to find it, and the system tries to find it by going through that hierarchy of paths. And then if it doesn't find it in those 4 places, it says, sorry, it's not here, even though it might be here. Okay. Conversely, when Pkgsrc goes to compile its packages, sometimes it'll link with, say, Haiku's Mesa is a very good example. Okay, so it links with Haiku's Mesa, and then when you go to run it, the embedded path inside the binary will say, hey, I want you to look in boot home package library. And then when it tries to use the Mesa you built in Pkgsrc with the unresolved symbols buried in it, it just says undefined reference to blah, 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 and, you get this minus phone number, and it's not going to work. The only way to actually get it to work is to copy in Haiku's Mesa into Pkgsrc and override the package there. It may be a better idea just to say that Mesa is built in. the person that made the Tilt OS operating system, who, in my opinion, has made the most progress out of anybody in getting desktop apps that are POSIX based for Haiku users built, at least. He didn't build Mesa. But he did build GIMP, and he did build GTK. So this has been a while here I've been saying shared memory stops the GTK. I don't know how he did it. I'm going to try to find out. But no. You actually, there is some way or some means to get programs that want shared memory to compile in this system. I just haven't figured out the magic. Or he used the shared memory header that was in progress. Didn't really include that as a patch. He just kind of placed it in his header directory and just started building. So you really can't repeat that result if right? Presumably that was the same shared memory header that's up at the Haiku site, but who knows? Whenever I used it, and I've since not used it, and I have kept a copy of the shared memory header that I at least attempted to use, and it's up at Git. This has taken a long, long time. So basically, but that has nothing to do with with the ping issue, except for that the error message says you're using a different version of ping than what this program was built with. And what the heck happened to all my stuff? So let's just do Kobo again. Flashes, then it goes away. It tries to open up the SDL window. Can't load up ping. This first complaint is directly related to what I just described. Getting an R path embedded in binaries or try to run, pointing to a different place than where, when the binary is compiled, the thing it linked to. Now, I will say this. If I were to, in fact, I'll just do this just to show. Here's the library. I'm going to hold off on saying this. I'm going to say what I believe I remember, but I actually don't even think I have the original library PNG on my system now. It didn't really make a difference. Otherwise, I would have used that in preference like I've done for library JPEG. The library JPEG that ships with Haiku, the library GL, the library Mesa, library Glut. I'm using those. Even in the place of package stores. Now, what I have done here is in certain, I gotta look. I'm not very clear as to how much of this I've actually swapped out. But I have done a lot of swapping. I will say that. Now, this stuff that dates back to August 2013, no, I didn't swap those out. And since I had to rescue my system, a lot of these things have actually come back from an older build. And I bet you I'm having problems with glue because this isn't. No, I'm just going to copy this. Alright, let's see if I get a better result. There were a few here that I was surprised didn't work, like Foo Billiard. billion times, but dominated. So I don't know what's going on with that. Foo-Billiard. It used to work. Doesn't anymore. I've had to trade things back and forth so many times. It's ridiculous. Bottom line is, all the PNG games are toast. And no matter what PNG I use. And the strange thing is, I actually do have a working GIMP here. And I downloaded the GIMP binary and all of its dependencies from the TiltOS website and put those things in boot home config non-packaged in their appropriate places. None of them have R paths embedded in them, so that's the only way to get them pathed. And it works well. If I actually had a X server. Just kind of, and you know, I may have needed to have that for Foo. And this is annoying. A lot of time this damn thing crashes. Alright, so we got that. GIMP. I've already done this. It takes a little while. It's not the fastest thing in the world. This GIMP relies on a PNG library that was built by, I'm calling him Penguin K, or Caliber, actually. This depends on a library PNG, but he's got a huge patch set. I mean, a very large patch set for library PNG. In result is that apparently it works. It's just an older version, and so I thought I tried it, but I'm not sure. Anyway, we're still in the same, and it just does take a long while to. These errors apparently are benign. There were a lot of errors I had to get rid of, even where it says this random whatever it is. No big deal. Anyway, well, let's go over the ones I've done so far, because it's going to take forever. So Kobo Deluxe isn't going to work. Lost Pixels doesn't work because of library PNG, so I'd have to rebuild that. Try to use the packages that were made by Caliber, and hopefully it doesn't really end all that gracefully either. Just hope that that I'll be able to use the patches that he made and get a working PNG, because I'll have a lot more games, and you'll see that. Right now, I don't see that Haiku Porter even tries to build library PNG. Some of the games just don't really. It isn't really clear how to use, but of course, Syrian wasn't really clear how to use until I figured out how to run Leisure Suit Larry in there. So, how many terminals do I have? Let's just do Lost Pixels. It starts, and as soon as it wants to start using library PNG, it dies. So, and it cannot read or understand some image file. Okay. So the library PNG that I've built, and the way that I built it, even though there was no errors involved in building it, it doesn't work in this system. there was other things that needed to be done that are beyond my technical knowledge to get library ping working, and apparently Caliber worked that out. Okay, now we got this thing called Reminiscence. And half time I don't really remember. So I gotta look up in the packages which one is which. RS, okay. And that dies because of God knows what that is. But it can't open it, so I'm going to label that junk. So far I've tried 6 on camera here, and only 1 has worked. And it had a side effect of resizing my screen. Okay, now there's this thing called a left phone. And I have no idea what the hell it does. It just does that. And there's this all phone. Okay. I really don't know what that does. It just, is it a game? Is it a virtual machine? Is it broken? Who knows? Okay, so now there's a game called A Maze. And it seems to work, or at one point it did. I guess it doesn't anymore, so let's maybe get out of that if I can. If I can't, well, let's just gotta kill the terminal. Okay, so I guess that's junk. It used to work, so now I'll mark that as junk. So now we've got 1 program that may or may not work, 1 that works that resizes my screen, and 6 that are junk. Okay, so there's this other game that makes anagrams. And you actually have the right, it works. I've already tried it. You have to have the right number of arguments to know how to work it. Another game called AOP, which really, It may work, it may not. I'll guess I can say that works. There's something called ASCII Corium. I wouldn't really call it a game, because it's just kind of, it doesn't really respond. It's more like a screensaver. And there's another game like, or supposed game like that we'll get to. There's another game called Angaband. Or something like that. ANG. And if you have an XDL server running, it'll go over here. If not, it'll just go to the terminal. That's fine. That killed my SDL, which just happens sometimes. You can count that as maybe, I don't know. So I'll just set this one aside. Okay, get that out of the way because it doesn't do much for the presentation. Okay, so we got Angaband. That seems to work. This other game called Nice is another undecipherable. I don't know what the fuck this thing does or how. Or, what do I do? No. Okay, I guess that's try Crescent. And it just doesn't seem to like that. It could be a pathing issue. Don't know. But not looking too good. And that was what? A Nice. Which I actually didn't even try yet. Okay, and there's something called Bastet. Just curses-based Tetris, and this works. So now we're getting some more. I'm gonna say Anise is broken. So out of 14, we have one questionable program, another program that works but resizes the screen. And about 5 curses-based programs. Here's this other program called Battalion, and last time I tried it, it gives me this GLX destroyed context error. It probably is trying to look in boot system library. I have to look around to see whether maybe if I had a better copy of library GL, I'd get a better result. That's questionable. I think I've used it before. Right now I'm going to mark it as junk. Then there's this thing called Battle Ball, but it requires that X11 be running. And it also requires something unusual. You have to say what screen you're going to use. The mouse integration is poor, if anything. The keyboard does seem to work, and the spacebar does seem to fire. It isn't all clear how to play this game, or what the object is, but I've done it, so I'm just going to get out of that. I'll say that works. Billiard GL definitely needs Haiku's library GL. It works, but it takes the whole screen. And the mouse integration is absolutely horrible. I guess I'll just show this. Okay, so actually the way I was doing this, to be able to even exit this game without having to so I'll move something I know that the mouse is going to show up on, and I'll just go like that. Then it wants to ask me again if I want to. Yeah, I want to quit. I actually haven't been able to shoot the ball. Didn't really resize my screen all that much that time. So, but it definitely has mouse issues. Okay, and the next game is going to be called Blind Mine. And it's junk, Python, something going on with that. There's something called Bomber Clone. And that has the PNG problem, so that's not going to work. Then there's something called BOS, which just doesn't know what config file to load. So maybe if I look right now, I'm going to call it junk. There's something called Bridge Hands that's curses base, and I wouldn't know what to do. It just spits some stuff out, kind of like you see in the newspaper sometimes. I'm not a bridge player. I don't know what any of that stuff means, but it doesn't look too decipherable. It looks like it's just some kind of random bridge hand generation algorithm or something like that. Almost just a screensaver or something. God knows. Okay. There's something called CB Zone that has it's too big for the screen. And the mouse integration sucks. It is if you get it to work. Let's see if I can. Sometimes the new games can't handle what the last game. So I I'm clicking the mouse. I guess it's firing stuff, but I'm dead already. And I don't really have full control of what's going on here. It seems as though my thing will go in the direction that my mouse points. Kind of. Now it's stuck, and I'm dead. Okay, got out of that. So that definitely has its problems. There's something called CGO. Ban that. I'm going to have to restart my X server. So it does have some. This seems to like it could work. I don't know what this does. I don't know where I'm supposed to look. For the games, I think I've loaded it up before, and it looks like it's some kind of classical Japanese game. I'm going to count that as working. Then there's something called chest. And because I don't know exactly what, I gotta figure out what the binary is, because none of these things have icons. They're all going to start from the command line. There's another mark against it. And it's D chest, I guess. Okay. This is a complete mystery. I don't know what it's trying to do, but it could be broken. It could be that I need to provide it with something. We got Circus Linux, which I know isn't going to work because this also has an issue with PNG. It'd be nice if you could just build libraries and they'll just work. C-Matrix is just a geeky screensaver from the Matrix. It requires no X11. Cold Chess is probably the most undesirable chess you'd ever want to play. Curses based. Then I got a documentation, Cold Chess books. And there's something called Core Wars. Again, it's not clear how you use. It does seem to work, but this last time I tried this, it seemed to destroy the X server, and I may even have to restart here. Yeah. So, and another necessary deletion. They're pressing the stupid shift key for this damn thing. And this will be part 1. I'll stop here.